Before he ever stood on the Pelennor fields, before the Witch King's name echoed across Middle-earth, Gandalf encountered something strange in the wild lands of the north. It was the Third Age, a time when shadows were growing longer, but few noticed. Gandalf, travelling under the name Mithrandir, had heard rumours of a growing darkness in the realm of Angmar, a place long forsaken by most. As Gandalf ventured deeper into those desolate lands, he felt a cold unlike any other. It was not just the chill of the northern winds. This cold crept into the bones, into the very soul. He couldn't shake the sensation that something was watching him from the darkness, something ancient and malevolent. One night, as he camped beneath a crumbling ruin, Gandalf dreamt of a shadow with burning eyes. In the dream, the figure reached for him with clawed hands, whispering words in a language older than the earth itself. Gandalf awoke with a start, his staff glowing faintly in the dim light. But even in waking, the sense of dread lingered. This was not an ordinary evil. It wasn't like Sauron, whom Gandalf had fought against for centuries. This was something deeper, older, a remnant of the ancient wars that had scarred the very bones of Middle-earth. And it was coming for him.
Though Gandalf did not yet show the name of the Witch King, he senses a growing power is Angmar on attack hath the potential to shake the very foundations of the world.
But why did this unknown darkness already stir fear in Gandalf's heart? What was it about this presence that made even a Maiar, one of the Valar's chosen, fear for the future of Middle-earth? In the next chapter, we will follow Gandalf as he delves deeper into the lore of Angmar, where legends of the Witch King begin to take shape. What he discovers will change everything. Stay with us as we unravel the secrets that even Gandalf feared to face. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to keep up with the mysteries of Middle-earth. The winds of the north whispered tales of an evil rising in Angmar. As Gandalf ventured further into these desolate lands, rumours became facts too dire to ignore. He found villages abandoned, their people fleeing southward in terror. It wasn't just the bitter cold that drove them, it was fear. Dark shapes had been seen on the horizon, and whispers of a ghostly king ruling from Carn Dûm filled every tavern and campfire. The Witch King's name had not yet reached the lips of common folk, but Gandalf sensed the presence of a malevolent ruler in the shadows. Each step toward Angmar's heart made Gandalf's ancient senses tighten with unease. Something terrible was consolidating power in the north, and the wizard knew he was too close to ignore it any longer. His investigation led him to a crumbling stronghold, the remains of some forgotten kingdom where old tomes were stored. There, in the dim light, he found hints of an ancient sorcerer king whose power reached beyond life and death. The legends spoke of a man who had once been noble, now cursed to serve a master far darker than the world had ever known. Sauron's touch was everywhere in these tales, but Gandalf knew the evil spoke of something even deeper. As he read, he stumbled upon the first written mention of Angmar's ruler, the Witch King, a lord of shadows who was feared not for his armies, but for the unnatural chill that followed his every command. And Gandalf felt it, the first traces of a fear he had never known before. But why did this figure cause such a stir in Gandalf's heart? What force beyond mortal comprehension did the Witch King serve? In the far reaches of the north, the Witch King of Angmar carved out his dark kingdom. Unlike other rulers who sought gold or land, his ambitions were far darker. His rise was swift, and in only a few short centuries, the once-forgotten land of Angmar became a bastion of fear and dread. His armies were vast, but it was not their strength that worried Gandalf. It was the terrifying whispers of black sorcery. Gandalf began studying the dark histories of the northern realms, piecing together fragmented stories of a ruler who could summon legions of the dead, who commanded the loyalty of creatures from the depths of the shadowy world. This power, Gandalf realized, was not entirely the Witch King's own. He was a puppet, a vessel for a greater evil, a darkness that had existed long before Sauron took shape. But what truly disturbed Gandalf was how little was known about this Dark Lord's origins. Even the elves, with their ancient knowledge, knew little of him beyond the shadows of myth. No one knew how he came to serve Sauron, or what promises had been made in the blackness of the past. And that unknown terrified Gandalf more than any force he had yet encountered. How could someone so shrouded in mystery rise to such power? What secrets did the Witch King hold that even the wise had failed to uncover? It was only after long years of research that Gandalf unearthed the truth. The Witch King of Angmar was one of the 9. He had once been a great king of men, gifted a ring of power by Sauron. But like all those who wore the 9 rings, he became enslaved, his will bound forever to the Dark Lord. The Witch King's ring granted him dominion over the dead and mastery over fear itself. But this ring did more than enslave him. It twisted him into something more than mortal. Over centuries, his humanity faded, leaving behind only the spectral terror that haunted the north. What Gandalf feared most was the realization that the Witch King's power was a mirror of Sauron's own. Through the ring, the Witch King had access to a fraction of the Dark Lord's malice, which made him an embodiment of Sauron's will. But the Witch King had a will of his own, a hunger for power that was growing by the day. This realization troubled Gandalf deeply. If Sauron's forces could corrupt a king so thoroughly, what hope did Middle-earth have if the Witch King's power went unchecked? The more Gandalf delved into the histories of the Witch King, the more unsettling connections he found to a darkness long thought defeated. Before Sauron, there had been Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, whose malevolence shaped the very foundations of the world. Morgoth's taint had been so deep it lingered in the bones of Middle-earth, corrupting anything it touched. As Gandalf studied the Witch King's rise, he began to see traces of Morgoth's ancient influence in Angmar's Dark Lord. The Witch King's power was not simply Sauron's gift. It had roots in something far older. Morgoth's shadow had left behind forbidden knowledge, dark sorceries that could twist life and death itself. It was whispered that the Witch King had learned these secrets, making him more dangerous than anyone realized. Gandalf knew now that this was not a simple servant of Sauron. The Witch King had become something more, a vessel for the lingering darkness of Morgoth's legacy. And that terrified Gandalf. Morgoth had been a force of pure destruction, a will to unmake all of creation. If his influence had touched the Witch King, then the threat was far worse than Gandalf had ever imagined. Could it be that Sauron's rise was only the beginning, and that the Witch King's true purpose was tied to an older, darker plan? In his travels, Gandalf uncovered a prophecy that haunted him deeply, a chilling prediction surrounding the Witch King. No man can kill him. It was a simple statement, but its implications shook even the wise to their core. This prophecy, spoken by ancient seers of Numenor, echoed through the ages, hinting at the Witch King's invincibility. No sword, no blade wielded by the hand of man could ever bring an end to his life. Gandalf pondered this prophecy often. How could such a thing be true? Even Sauron himself was not invincible. But there was a dark truth in the words, a hidden power tied to the Witch King's immortality. It was more than just Sauron's influence. The Witch King had become a living curse, bound by ancient forces that transcended the power of the rings. This prophecy left Gandalf uneasy. If no man could kill him, who or what could? The thought weighed heavily on the wizard's mind. For if even the strongest warriors of Middle-earth could not end the Witch King's life, what hope did they have in the battle to come? More troubling still was Gandalf's realization that the Witch King may have been aware of this prophecy himself. It was said that he fought with a fearlessness unlike any other, as though he knew that death could not claim him. But what if this invulnerability hid a deeper weakness, one that only the wisest could discern? Gandalf came to understand that the Witch King's immortality was not the gift it appeared to be. His power, while great, was rooted in an unnatural existence. He had become something beyond mortal, a wraith, trapped between life and death, never truly alive but never able to die. This state was not just a result of the ring of power he wore. It was something darker, a power that bound his spirit to the world, even as his body faded into the shadows. The Witch King's immortality was a twisted form of sorcery. Gandalf suspected that the Witch King had delved into forgotten dark arts, ancient spells tied to Morgoth's legacy, allowing him to transcend death. But such power came at a terrible price. Over the centuries, the Witch King had lost more and more of his humanity. What remained was a being of pure malice, driven by the will of Sauron, and something darker still. But this power, this ability to defy death, made Gandalf fear the Witch King more than any other servant of Sauron. Gandalf knew that the Witch King's mastery over death gave him control over those who feared it. His mere presence brought terror to even the bravest hearts. He could turn warriors into cowards and sap the will of entire armies. The Witch King was not just a commander of the living. He was a ruler of fear itself. Could Gandalf find a way to confront this unnatural force? And if the Witch King could not die by normal means, how could he be stopped? The more Gandalf researched the Witch King's power, the more he uncovered disturbing ties to Morgoth's dark disciples, those who had served the original, Dark Lord long before Sauron took his place. There were whispers of dark sorceries passed down through the ages, and it was said that the Witch King had learned these forbidden arts. The Wraith had become a master of ancient secrets, spells and curses so old that they predated the rise of men. Gandalf discovered stories that linked the Witch King to a shadowy group of sorcerers who had once served Morgoth. These ancient followers, the disciples of the Black Flame, were known to have practiced magic that twisted the very fabric of life and death. It was possible that the Witch King had been initiated into their dark rites, granting him knowledge that no other in Middle-earth possessed. This connection explained why the Witch King's power felt so ancient and cold, a chill that even Gandalf struggled to withstand. Gandalf began to fear that the Witch King's strength was not just tied to Sauron, but to the very fabric of evil that Morgoth had woven into the world. If the Witch King had access to Morgoth's forbidden knowledge, then he was far more dangerous than even Sauron's other servants. The question haunted Gandalf. Was the Witch King merely Sauron's tool, or was he building something darker, something even his master did not foresee? Carn Dûm, the dark fortress of the Witch King, had long since fallen into ruin. But when Gandalf arrived at its shattered gates, he felt the lingering presence of its former master. The air was thick with a cold that seemed unnatural, and the ground beneath his feet felt tainted. No birds flew here, no animals stirred. Carn Dûm was a place where life itself had been twisted by dark sorceries. As Gandalf entered the decaying halls, he sensed something watching him. Ancient spirits bound to this place, remnants of the Witch King's reign. These were not simple ghosts. They were shadows of those who had served the Witch King, bound in death to his will. Their presence filled the air with dread, and Gandalf's staff glowed softly, warding off the cold malice that filled the room. In the deepest chamber of the fortress, Gandalf discovered a relic, an ancient black stone, pulsing with dark energy. The stone radiated power, a remnant of the Witch King's sorcery. As Gandalf touched it, he was flooded with visions. Visions of the Witch King's rise to power, of his pact with Sauron, and of his mastery over death. But there was something else, a shadow behind the shadow, a force that had guided the Witch King's hand for centuries. It was clear now, the Witch King was not just a servant of Sauron. He had drawn his power from sources older and darker than any the world had known. But what was this shadowy force? Could it be Morgoth's lingering will, or something even more terrifying? As Gandalf left Carn Dûm, the weight of his discovery pressed heavily on him. The Witch King was not simply a ringwraith, but a vessel for a deeper, older power. Gandalf began to understand that this unseen force could manipulate not only the living, but the very essence of fear itself. This was what made the Witch King so dangerous. It was not just his sword or his armies. It was the way he could bend the minds of men and elves alike, sowing doubt and despair wherever he went. Gandalf knew that if the Witch King continued to rise, entire nations could crumble without a single battle fought. His power was rooted in the unseen, the fear that lingered in the minds of those who stood against him. But what was this force that fueled the Witch King's abilities? Gandalf suspected it was more than just Sauron's influence. There were whispers of darker things at work, forces that predated even the Second Age of Middle-earth. And then there was the prophecy. Gandalf could not shake the thought that the Witch King's fate was bound to something greater, something that no man could alter. Could it be that this unseen threat was part of a plan far older than the Dark Lord's war? As Gandalf journeyed away from the cursed halls of Carn Dûm, the weight of his discovery deepened. He had found evidence of dark magic that predated even Sauron's rise, whispers of forbidden sorceries that had festered in the shadows for millennia. But there was more to this than mere history. It was the future that concerned him now. Gandalf's mind raced as he recalled tales of Morgoth's ancient disciples, dark spirits who had survived the fall of their master. He had always believed that Sauron was Morgoth's greatest heir. But what if the Witch King had tapped into that same ancient well of evil? What if his powers, his dominion over fear, were more than just the gifts of a ringwraith? The deeper Gandalf delved into the lore, the clearer it became. Morgoth's legacy still lived in the world, hidden in dark corners, manifesting in ways even the wise could scarcely comprehend. The Witch King might be part of a greater plan, one that stretched back to the First Age, to the moment Morgoth's malice was first unleashed upon Middle-earth. But if that was true, Gandalf feared what might come next. Sauron's war against the Free Pupils was one thing, but the Witch King's rise, with powers drawn from something older and darker, hinted at a far greater threat. Was it possible that Sauron's servant was not just fighting for dominion over Middle-earth, but to unlock something far worse, something that even Gandalf could not predict? The question lingered. Could the Witch King be the key to a deeper evil that lay dormant beneath the surface of the world?
Gandalf's search for answers led him to the lost skies of Numenor. The Mickey is lang change of the high sunk beneath the waves long ago. Numenor had been a realm of grace, power and wisdom, but it had also harbored deep corruption. The final days of Numenor were filled with whispers of dark pacts made in desperation with dark powers.
As Gandalf pored over ancient scrolls, he uncovered a connection that sent chills through his spine. There were old records, buried in the lore of the Dunedain, that spoke of a shadowy figure present in Numenor's final days, an emissary of evil who had influenced the king's madness.
This figure had promised immortality and dominion over death, much like the Witch King himself.
Could the Witch King's rise have its roots in Numenor's fall? Gandalf began to suspect that the Witch King, before he became a Wraith, had been tied to Numenor's last, desperate grasp for power. What if the ring Sauron had gifted him was not just a tool of control, but a culmination of ancient knowledge, drawn from the very downfall of Numenor? The island had been consumed by its own hunger for immortality, and that same hunger now lived on in the Witch King. The more Gandalf uncovered, the more his fear grew. If the Witch King was linked to Numenor, then his power was not just an extension of Sauron's will. It was born from a greater curse, the same curse that had doomed an entire kingdom. Could it be that the Witch King's immortality was more than a gift from the Dark Lord? Was it the result of a far older and more terrible magic, one that could destroy not just men, but entire civilizations? As Sauron's war spread across Middle-earth, the Witch King grew ever more powerful. His dominion over fear and death strengthened with each passing day, and Gandalf realized that time was running out. The forces of men and elves were strong, but they were not prepared for the terror the Witch King wielded. With every battle, he grew bolder, pushing closer to the heart of Middle-earth, and Gandalf knew that the true threat lay not in his armies, but in his unseen power. Gandalf could feel the noose tightening around the free peoples. The Witch King's influence was spreading like a plague, infecting the minds of soldiers and kings alike. His mere presence on the battlefield caused panic, and entire battalions would flee before his shadow had even crossed their path. But there was something else, a dark realization that settled in Gandalf's heart. The Witch King was not merely acting on Sauron's orders. He was testing the boundaries of his own power, exploring the full extent of his immortality and fear mastery. Gandalf feared that the Witch King had begun to suspect his invulnerability, and that he was preparing for a greater purpose, one beyond the war of Sauron. Could it be that the Witch King had his own ambitions, separate from his master's plan? Was there a deeper, hidden agenda behind his relentless march on Middle-earth? It was in the land of Rohan, amidst the rolling plains, that Gandalf first felt the full force of the Witch King's presence. The skies had darkened, and the wind howled with an unnatural chill. The two forces met, not in battle, but in a silent duel of wills. The Witch King had not yet revealed himself fully, but Gandalf could feel his presence, a shadow lingering on the edge of sight, watching, waiting. For a moment, Gandalf's mind touched the Witch King's, and what he felt chilled him to his very core. The Witch King's mind was not like Sauron's, full of malice and domination. It was empty, a hollow void where no humanity remained. The sheer absence of life was more terrifying than any evil Gandalf had faced. It was as if death itself had taken form, and now walked the earth. The Witch King probed at Gandalf's mind, seeking to unravel his will, to sow doubt and fear. But Gandalf held firm, his staff glowing with a light that pushed back the darkness. Yet, in that brief moment of contact, Gandalf sensed something deeper, a force that the Witch King had not yet fully unleashed, something dark and ancient that lurked just beneath the surface. Could this be the true source of the Witch King's power? And if so, what was holding it back? Was the Witch King waiting for the right moment to reveal his final form, or was there something else, something even darker, guiding his hand? Gandalf's search for answers led him to a legend long forgotten. A tale of a sword, wielded by men, but forged by powers beyond mortal craft. This weapon, it was said, was created in the First Age, during the war against Morgoth. It was a sword meant to strike down evil, but over time its purpose was twisted. The Witch King, with his mastery over death, had rendered such weapons useless against him. It was said that no man's blade could cut through the darkness that surrounded him. Gandalf sought out this lost sword, believing it might hold the key to breaking the Witch King's invulnerability. But the deeper he searched, the more the prophecy loomed in his mind: no man can kill him. If this prophecy were true, then even the most powerful weapon of old would be useless in a man's hands. Could there be another way to end the Witch King's reign? Was there a flaw in the prophecy, some loophole that Gandalf could exploit? Or was the answer not in weapons? Subscribe and hit the notification bell to continue unraveling the mysteries of Middle-earth. The armies of Mordor marched on Minas Tirith, and at their head rode the Witch King of Angmar, his presence casting a shadow over the White City. As the forces of Gondor braced for the coming siege, Gandalf stood on the walls, feeling the weight of the prophecy heavy on his mind. No man can kill him. The words echoed in his thoughts as he watched the Witch King approach, cloaked in shadow, mounted on his fell beast. The assault was relentless. The Witch King's mere presence shattered the morale of Gondor's soldiers, and even the bravest warriors faltered in his work. Gandalf fought tirelessly, driving back the forces of darkness where he could, but he knew the true battle lay ahead. It was not a battle of armies, but of wills, a confrontation between him and the Witch King that could decide the fate of Middle-earth. As the great gate of Minas Tirith trembled under the Witch King's blows, Gandalf stood firm. The air around him grew colder as the Witch King approached. For the first time, the two would meet face to face in this final confrontation. But as Gandalf gripped his staff, a deep fear gnawed at him. Could the prophecy be true? Was there truly no way for him or any man to defeat this wraith? But there was more to the Witch King's power than just prophecy. Gandalf could feel it. The dark force that surrounded him, the sorcery that bound him to the world. It was ancient, older than Sauron, older than the ring itself, and it was that power which Gandalf feared most. The battlefield outside Minas Tirith erupted in chaos. The Witch King, mounted on his terrifying winged beast, had breached the gates of the White City. The defenders scattered before his shadow, and even the most hardened warriors trembled in his presence. But Gandalf did not flee. He stood alone, his white robes gleaming, staff in hand, waiting for the inevitable. The prophecy weighed heavily on his mind. No man can kill him. But there was something deeper at play, something Gandalf had yet to fully understand. The Witch King's power was not just his immortality. It was rooted in fate itself, as though his death had been woven into the very fabric of Middle-earth. But what kind of fate awaited him? As the Witch King advanced, Gandalf saw something in his eyes. An ancient hunger, a deep thirst for an ending that had been denied to him for centuries. The Witch King knew his fate, and he revelled in it. He was not merely a servant of Sauron. He was an instrument of doom, a force that had been building since the earliest days of the world. Gandalf began to suspect that the Witch King's invincibility might not be the strength it appeared to be. What if the prophecy was not just about his protection, but about his purpose? What if the Witch King's death, when it finally came, would unleash something far darker? The battlefield was a sea of chaos as Gandalf and the Witch King finally came face to face on the fields of Pelennor. The black-robed figure dismounted from his beast, standing tall before Gandalf, his cold, empty eyes fixed on the wizard. The world seemed to hold its breath as the two ancient powers prepared for their final confrontation. Gandalf could feel the full weight of the Witch King's presence now. His mastery over death, his command of fear, his aura of invincibility. But as the two locked eyes, Gandalf sensed something else. A flicker of vulnerability, buried deep beneath layers of darkness. The prophecy still echoed in his mind. No man can kill him. And for the first time, Gandalf began to wonder if there was more to those words than he had realized. Their confrontation was not a clash of swords, but a battle of wills. The Witch King's voice, cold and cruel, pierced the air, taunting Gandalf, reminding him of the prophecy. But Gandalf held firm, his mind racing. What if the Witch King's fate had been sealed not by his invincibility, but by something else entirely? Before Gandalf could strike, a cry rang out across the battlefield. Eowyn, shield maiden of Rohan, stood before the Witch King, her blade raised high. "I am no man," she declared, and with a swift strike, her blade pierced the Witch King's body, shattering the prophecy in an instant. But as the Witch King fell, a terrible silence descended over the battlefield. Gandalf watched, his heart pounding, as the Wraith's form dissolved into shadow. Yet even as the Witch King's body crumbled, Gandalf felt a terrible fear growing within him. Had they truly defeated the Witch King, or had they just unleashed something far worse? As the Witch King fell, Gandalf sensed it immediately. The dark force that had bound the Wraith to this world had not been destroyed. It had been released. For centuries the Witch King had been bound by his ring, his power tied to Sauron, and the prophecy that no man could kill him. But now, with his death, that dark magic had been set free, unleashed into the world. Gandalf felt a cold dread settle over him. The prophecy had not just been about protecting the Witch King, it had been about containing something far worse. The Witch King's immortality had been a curse, not just for him, but for all of Middle-earth. His death had been held back for so long, because his fall would open the door to an even greater darkness. As Gandalf looked to the skies, he wondered, what ancient power had been hidden within the Witch King? Was it Morgoth's lingering will, waiting for its moment to rise again?
Or was it something even more terrible? An ancient force of destruction that had been dormant for ages, now unleashed upon the world?
The battle had been won, but Gandalf knew that Middle-earth was not yet safe. The Witch King's death had unlocked a mystery that had been buried for millennia, and Gandalf feared what might come next. Why Gandalf feared the Witch King? 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 The dust of the battle settled, and Minas Tirith stood victorious. But Gandalf's heart was heavy with unease. The Witch King of Angmar had fallen, but in his death, Gandalf felt the weight of a new threat. The prophecy had been fulfilled, and yet it had left behind more questions than answers. As Gandalf walked the quiet halls of Minas Tirith, he could not shake the feeling that something greater was at work. The Witch King's fall had been the end of one story, but the beginning of another. His immortality had been tied not just to Sauron, but to an older, more insidious force, a force that might now be free to act. The unspoken fear lingered in Gandalf's mind. What if the Witch King had been part of a much larger plan? What if his defeat was not the end, but merely the first step in the return of a power long forgotten? The ancient evil of Morgoth, the shadow that had been lurking behind Sauron, might still have its eyes on Middle-earth. Gandalf's thoughts turned to the future. The Free Peoples had won the battle, but the war against darkness was never truly over. There were always deeper forces at work, hidden behind the veil of prophecy and fate. And as long as that darkness existed, Middle-earth would never truly be free. As he gazed into the horizon, Gandalf knew that the true battle was yet to come.